These were the 6 practice problems I gave you to try in class, and I just want to make sure that you see the answers. So I'm going to go step by step through each problem. Number 1, it ends in acid. That means I know I have to have an H plus in it. At least one, if not more. If I need hands, I know that as 1. I also notice it does not start with hydro. If it doesn't start with hydro, it's coming from a polyatomic ion. And I notice perchloric. Well, my rules are that should come from perchlorate. Perchlorate is ClO4 with a -1 charge. That means it has 1 hand. That means my answer is HClO4, perchloric acid. Number 2, HBr. I notice there's no O, so I'm going to start with hydro. And then my blank will bromine, so brome being the piece I need, ic, hydrobromic acid. 3, nitrous acid. Doesn't start with a hydro. I know it comes from a polyatomic ion. Nitrous must come from nitrite. Well, I know that nitrite is NO2 minus 1. So 1 hand from my cheat sheet. That would be nitrite. It goes to us. Now to make an acid, I know I need a hydrogen. Well, hydrogen also has 1 hand. So my formula for nitrous acid is HNO2. Acetic acid. Again, doesn't start with hydro, must come from my polyatomic ions, must have an O. Acetic must come from acetate. Looking at the cheat sheet, acetate, C2H3O2 minus. That must have 1 hand. Put it with a hydrogen to make it into an acid. Looking at that formula, H, C2H3O2. If you wrote this differently and put like C2H4O2, or there's other ways to write it as well, that would be fine as long as you ultimately have these correct atoms. The problem, however, is I distinguish an acid by its starting by H, so it's much easier to separate the H from the acetate ion. Look at this one. I see an O, so it's not going to start with the word hydro. I look at the PO4, well, that's phosphate, so 8 goes to ic. So it's going to be in phosphorus is kind of like the sulfur ones. Phosphoric acid. It's not going to be phosphic acid. That's the reason why I did want to go over this. Phosphorus is just a funky one. If you're looking, you notice there are 3 H's. Well, there are 3 H's because phosphate has 3 hands and H only has 1. Number 6. It starts with hydro, which tells me there's no O. So it's just the acid, the H+. This acid word tells me there's an H+. And nitric, well, that must come from nitrogen. If I look on my periodic table, nitrogen has a 3- charge and therefore must have 3 hands. So I must have 3 H+ to go with it. So my formula for hydronitric acid must be H3